Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another episode of Spring Office Hours. I'm your host, Dan Vega. Alongside me, as always, my good friend,
It's
DaShaun
me.
Carter. DaShaun, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? It's cold in Minnesota.
It's very cold in Cleveland.
It's
I
cold.
tweeted out earlier, I'm glad I still have the Intel-based MacBook as a laptop heater.
Yep.
It does heat you up very well. And I'm wearing my ViewComp Florida shirt to remember the good old Florida sun.
Very good.
I also tweeted out, hey, I'm not above. If you want to send me free swag, I will wear it on the show. So I'm not
Yeah,
above that.
we can be bought. Hello,
We
hello.
can be.
Welcome to the show.
Cool. So
Hello,
I,
hello.
I would say I haven't seen you in a while, but I have. I saw you last week.
Yes. It feels like just yesterday. Greg's
I
in the
know.
house.
So
Wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about last week. We're going to get into SpringOne Essentials. This was the online experience in place of the SpringOne event that unfortunately had to get canceled in December. But last week was awesome. SpringOne Essentials was awesome. There were so many announcements. There's so many great presentations. It was great to be back around people again in an office with a color coordinated bookshelf and games. So yeah, it was really great to be in San Francisco, and we'll kind of talk through that today.
It was great. It was definitely an event. Uh, Thousands of attendees. I still kind of feel some of the momentum from last week online. Uh, Lots of great questions, lots of great content was delivered, and yeah, it was refreshing. I felt like I got upgraded during SpringOne Essentials last week.
For sure. All right. As always, please get your questions in. Doesn't have to be related to SpringOne Essentials. Ask your questions. We'll see if we can't answer them. We did a lot of that last week. Anytime we're around people, we get questions thrown at us, which is good. It kind of builds up our vast knowledge of different customers and different questions we get asked. So please get those questions in. We'll see if we can't get them answered.
And it's your
And
questions, it's that feedback. Your questions are what help us understand, hey, maybe we're not documenting something right. Maybe we're missing something. We need the feedback. So your questions help us understand where our community is and how we can help. We are
Yep,
advocates. We want to advocate for you.
exactly. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. We're going to go through a whole bunch of stuff,
Before
and
you
then
do
I'm
that,
going to,
I want to do
yeah,
one quick thing.
yeah.
I did send out stickers. I'm sending stickers
Oh,
out
nice.
all over the world. If you would like a Spring Office Hours sticker, all you got to do is email us stickers at springofficehours.io. In
Awesome.
the chat, stickers, and send me I need your address. Uh, we're in the US, so it might take a while for some of you, but send us your full address. That's it. That's all you have to do. Email us stickers at springofficehours.io with your address, and we will send you stickers. So I've sent
Awesome.
out some stickers, so expect them soon for those of you that have asked.
Oh, we do got a question. Maybe we can jump on that before we get into some of today's items.
What's the best way to upgrade to the latest version of Spring Cloud, Spring Boot? Do you want to start?
Yeah, so I don't know about Spring Cloud. I don't have any specifics on that. I can talk more about Spring Boot. There is a really good migration guide. I think we should probably have this on hand to just keep throwing it because we get this asked a lot. But there is a Spring Boot 3 migration guide. We'll see if we can't get that added to the show notes. And this walks you through all of the things that you want to look out for as you upgrade to Spring Boot 3.0. The biggest thing is maybe not trying to jump from, say, like 2 or 2.1 or 2.4 all the way to 3. Try and get yourself up to 2.7 and on Java 17. Make sure you're good there. Then make the move to 3.0 and baseline at Java 17 and Jakarta EE 9 and 10 and all of the good stuff there. There are also some suggestions if you're using like security in your application. There are changes in Spring Security 6 that have a lot of features, not a lot, a few features that have been deprecated. So you want to make those changes as well. again, that migration guide's the best place to start because it has a whole document of like, these are the things you need to look out for. As far as Spring Cloud, I don't know the answer to that. Again, so Spring Cloud is such a big portfolio of things, right? It just depends what you're using and what you're trying to upgrade to. I don't know of anything off the top of my head that would stand out to me going, oh, make sure you look out for that. So
I have seen many, many examples of what this community is doing, migrating on blog posts. So lots of examples. Maybe I should add those to the show notes where community, I was upgrading from this version to this. Here's the steps that I took. Here's what I ran into. So there's lots of evidence out on the blogs, out on the internet for what people have done. So I can tell that a lot of people are excited about this migration to Spring Boot 3.
Yep. Cool. All right. No other questions. I'm going to share my screen here. I have a very important announcement to make. Today is our good friend Josh Long's birthday. So he gets birthday balloons.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
So happy birthday to Josh. I don't think Josh really needs an introduction. He is our friend. He is our coworker. He is the longest standing Spring developer advocate in the world. That is the title, I think. So Josh's birthday. So if you get a chance, go out on Twitter, wish him a happy birthday. He also, I won't say it's a new one because there was videos from a few years ago. He has resurrected this YouTube channel and he is doing some focus on this. So if you want to, go ahead and subscribe to this channel, Coffee and Software with Josh Long. He, by the way, did not ask me to plug this. I am plugging this on my own because it's his birthday. This is your birthday present, Josh.
And it's going to be good content for sure.
Absolutely. So that's Josh. Happy birthday. Another calendar. I don't know why Josh Long's birthday is not on the release calendar, but it should be. So one thing we like to do is take a look at the release calendar. If you don't know about it, calendar.spring.io kind of keeps you up to date with everything that's going on in the Spring ecosystem, not just Spring Framework and Spring Boot, all of the other projects. And there are a lot. There's a lot to keep up with. So this is a really good place to start. So today is Tuesday, the 31st. Not much happening this week. So STS 4.17.2 release. We weren't here last week. A couple things got released last week as well. Integration for AWS, Spring Cloud Stream Binder AWS. And then the previous week was on Tuesday, the 17th, we were here. Spring Boot 3.0.2 did get released on that 19th there. So that is the latest version. If you go over to start.spring.io, a whole bunch of fixes and patches are in there that pulls in that Spring Framework 6.0.4. So really great place to go ahead and start if you want to keep up with what's happening in the Spring ecosystem.
We have another question out here. Is Spring Modulith for monolithic, or can I apply it to microservices? How do you feel about that one?
I'm not very familiar with the project.
Okay. Well, I'll jump on it then.
I know who is behind it and I know the general premise of it, but.
So the idea is a long-standing argument like, hey, do I need microservices? If I'm starting today and I kind of know what my app should look like, and maybe it's just me, I'm the only one doing development, let's call it an experiment. I shouldn't make a bunch of projects. I shouldn't have multiple repositories. It'll be faster if I put things into one repository. I keep all of my thoughts together. What the Spring Modulith is going to do is that it puts in place some guardrails so that when it is time to split that out, you're adding members to your team. It's time to split that out into microservices and get the value of being able to release things separately on that path to production. It puts in place those guardrails to make it so that you can pull apart your monolith. You can split that out easily into microservices at some later date. And that's the main thing. So it prevents you from doing calls across packages where it'll make it difficult. You'll limit the interdependencies. It'll limit the coupling between those services, those modules.
Cool. I think, something else to remember on that subject too is, you know, as far as distributed architectures go, it's kind of become synonymous with microservices, and microservices are just a type of distributed architecture. There are many other patterns and ways to accomplish a distributed architecture that aren't microservices. So, one example I hear a lot of people say is like, I don't want a database per service. And okay, that's fine. You don't need one. Like there are ways to distribute your application without having separate databases for each one. Now, microservices have become very popular because they do solve a real problem, and there are ways to solve that problem, but there are other solutions too. So take a look at those. Do some reading on distributed architecture in general.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Use hashtag Spring Office Hours on your socials, Spring Office Hours. Let us know what does your deployment look like? Big or small, we want to hear it all. Let us know what it looks like in your neck of the woods.
Absolutely. All right, we have a lot to get to, so I think I'll just keep moving along here. I have a new newsletter that came out Monday, really just talking about SpringOne Essentials. I don't know why this is so big, but it is big. But I thought I would share it because there are some pictures in here. If you weren't in San Francisco, again, DaShaun and I were in San Francisco last week. We were at the VMware offices in San Fran. This is not the headquarters. The headquarters are in Palo Alto, but there's a really awesome office in San Francisco. And so we got a chance to hang out there for a little bit. So there's kind of the front desk. I talked about the SpringOne Essentials. We're going to go through some of this stuff today. When we got there early on Tuesday morning, the balloons were being delivered. So DaShaun and I carried up the balloons, and that was a lot of fun. So DaShaun quick-wittingly snapped this picture, and he if you can't tell from pictures, because the first time I met DaShaun, I was like, wow, you are a tall person. DaShaun's a big, tall guy, and he's able to stick his arms out 20 feet in front of you and get a good wide picture there. So thanks for the quick, witty picture taking there, DaShaun, because that one was awesome.
Absolutely.
This was a snack bar that we had in the office for that day, for the day of the SpringOne Essentials. And look at that. I'm just like, wow, I wish that was back here.
Can we talk about the green?
These green things over here?
Yeah, those ones.
Do you still have these in your possession?
You warned me. So there were some leftovers. They were in a bag. I was walking out. I was like, man, those are so good. And I took the bag. I took the whole bag.
He's not lying. The whole bag of leftovers.
I took it to my hotel, and I ate too much.
I said, DaShaun, you may not want to take those. That's going to hurt.
It did. It messed me up real bad. I just couldn't stop eating them. They were so delicious, and they were spring colors, so it was great.
It was great. I had a few gummy bears and these chocolates, so that was awesome. I also here's the bookshelf from the office. I love a good color coordinated bookshelf. It just makes my OCD happy. Really happy.
And that picture, yeah, opened the door to some other awesome conversations.
Yeah. Just randomly tweeted something out, and some people in the office were like, oh, we didn't know you guys were here. And we got to talk to some folks in the office. So that was really cool. I think that's all I want to talk about there. Cool. So a little bit more into SpringOne Essentials. So some things were announced. One of the things was the new Spring Academy. So there's a blog post. I'll go ahead and see if we can get this added to the show notes, or you can head over to tanzu.vmware.com on the blog. And this just kind of talks through what the Spring Academy is. There is a website, spring.academy. Learn from experts, build like a boss. Love that. So this is an on-demand education developed and curated by the world's foremost experts in Spring. And I don't think you can think of anyone who knows Spring as much as this guy right here. You can see him right on the front page. Real world training from the best in the community. So this is a chance to go through here. There is a free account, so you can create your own free account if you want. You get on-demand access to Spring training. You get to go through some like real world projects. There's also a pro account. I do not get a commission on this, but if you want to throw our name in, please do. Spring Academy Pro for $2.99 a year. The important thing to note here is that you get a Spring Certified Professional Exam Voucher. And for those of you who have done the Spring certification in the past, your eyes are probably lighting up right now because this used to cost a lot more to go through. I don't know the particulars on what it cost. I remember they were pretty high, but to go through and get trained and get a certification was a lot more than $2.99. So this is a huge bargain. You get the certification exam voucher and all of the lessons and pro courses. So definitely worth checking out. I've seen a lot of the curriculum for at least 2 of the courses. So really great content here, and just hats off to the entire team behind putting Spring Academy together. Anything you want to?
Couple questions. No, I signed up for Spring Academy. I'm always trying to learn. It looks like a great resource. There's tons of content available for free. I have not started yet, I'll be honest, because last week I admitted I hadn't used all of the new features in Spring Data Redis. So I spent a lot of time since last week working with that. But as soon as I'm done wrapping up this project, I'm going to jump feet first into Spring Academy. There's a couple of questions. One here from Dan says, I really like Spring Boot Statistics / Grafana Labs. Can you talk OpenTelemetry? This keeps on coming up during our show. The Spring actuator, the Spring Boot actuator was a big, big deal for me in my career. Having those metrics available, having insight into what's really happening inside of my application made a big difference in my career. And I get it. Like, this is going to continue to move forward. Dan, we have talked about this quite a few times on the show. We've had Jonathan on the show. You might want to go and check out his episode on tanzu.tv or springofficehours.io. You'll get to the same place. Go check out that episode. But I definitely think this is one of those topics that we could literally talk about it every week. It should probably be a part of every single one of our demos. So yeah, thank you. Stay tuned. We'll have more around Spring Boot, Grafana, and OpenTelemetry real soon.
Yeah, I would say I do have a little bit of an observation demo in my Spring Boot 3, What's New in Spring Boot 3 tutorial that's on YouTube. So you can check that out. There are chapters, so you don't have to watch the whole thing if you don't want to. So jump into that. Again, the changes in Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3 around observability are really just the beginning. This is a story that's going to continue as we keep progressing with the Spring Framework. But it's already there, and there are ways to collect a lot of metrics right out of the box and use something like Grafana to, create your dashboards and collect that information. So, yeah, I agree. We need more. We need more tutorials and information about it, because right now, just the docs are there. There's not a lot of other examples of as a learner, I need to be told why first. So why do I care about this stuff? And what are some practical examples of when I should be using this? So I think that's where we could contribute.
All right. I had a couple more. Dan Vega, loved your videos on Spring Security. I love the new revamp, and your videos help me understand quite a lot.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Appreciate that.
Thank you for that feedback. Also, a newbie question. It's a great question. Is it possible to deploy Spring Boot app locally on my local machine for my own use to not pay for services like Heroku or other paid services? Yes. And I highly recommend you start on your laptop. That is not a new question. That's one of the big values of Spring Boot, is it kind of gives you all of that, all the middleware you need, everything that you need to run your application on your laptop. And that's where you should start, is on your laptop.
Or what about a Raspberry Pi? I know you have
a Raspberry
Pi.
92 Raspberry Pis. I'm debating. I have a bunch of Raspberry Pi zeros, the first version, that do not run 64-bit, so I can't deploy Spring Boot native to those. So I think I'm actually going to give away, it's about 25 of them, these first version of the Raspberry Pi Zero and 0W. And yeah, and I've also, I heard through the grapevine that the team over at GrawlVM, our friends over at GrawlVM, have announced that they have support for RISC V, native image support for RISC V, which is just another architecture in my head, that same bucket for my Raspberry Pis. I can go out and buy these $50, $30 single board computers, and I can deploy potentially Spring Boot, Spring Native. I haven't done it yet, but I have some in the mail on the way, and I'm excited to explore that real soon as well. Like, how easy is it, and how exciting is it that I have these little devices that I can put all over, and and I can deploy Spring Boot, my favorite framework. I can deploy it to these little devices.
Yeah, when we were in San Francisco, we went to a computer shop next to the VMware offices. DaShaun was like, "You got any Raspberry Pis? You got any?"
Yeah,
because he was ready to get them all. So.
Well, I'll be honest. I've got some that are unopened. I think I have 3 more still that are unopened. And I was going to wait and do something special on a stream or something. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
I've got some.
Well, let me know when you do that, because I'd love to check that out. Because I'm one of those people who bought one of those books on like things to do with the Raspberry Pi, and never bought a Raspberry Pi and never like tinkered with it. And it's been one of those things on my long list of things I'd like to do. So.
I'm going to tell you a little secret. One of the abstracts that I've put together, I'm really excited to present, is hot dog or not hot dog with Spring Boot.
I saw the title for that abstract because you sent it to me yesterday. I honestly didn't have a chance to read the description, but I feel like I need to read the description now because I'm not quite sure where that's going. So,
image recognition, pure Java.
I've watched Silicon Valley. I've watched Silicon Valley, so I got you.
But the example, that target architecture, that target implementation is well suited and validated on a Raspberry Pi 02W. A $15 computer is going to be able to run hot dog or not hot dog.
Not a hot dog. So that was great. Okay, cool. Let me go back here.
Simon, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us again.
Awesome. So we talked about Spring Academy. The next, actually, I'm going to bring up this first. So the golden path to SpringOne. So again, SpringOne Essentials. SpringOne Essentials was the replacement for SpringOne that was going to happen in December. There were a lot more sessions that were going to take place in December than what we are able to get to on the SpringOne Essentials virtual conference. And I see we're streaming here. So what we did is we reached out to a lot of those speakers and said, hey, we are creating this golden path to SpringOne. We want to go ahead and highlight your talk that was accepted, that we were going to highlight in San Francisco. We'd love for you to come on and do that for us. So we did that. So we created this golden path to SpringOne. Every single Tuesday and Thursday, there's going to be a new talk that you can go ahead and check out. So we had one today that already took place. We have, again, every Tuesday and Thursday. And as you start to go down this list, you'll see some really amazing speakers. Our friend Thomas Vitale, Matt Rabel, Marco, Aaron and Dan, Oleg. I mean, just so many great speakers, so many different talks that I'm really interested in checking out myself. And you and I are actually going to be hosts of some of these shows. So somebody from VMware will host each of these episodes, and then the speaker will go in to their presentation. So yeah, I'm excited about this. This is really great to see every Tuesday and Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Check this page out to get a list of all of those shows.
Thursday. I'm hosting my first one on Thursday.
Nice.
It Takes Two to Salsa.
I love that title. I saw that.
It's going to be awesome.
I love it. I saw that title. All right. Can you think of anything else that you want to kind of talk about when it comes to SpringOne Essentials besides what I have on screen here?
No, it's just the golden path. It's really from now all the way up until SpringOne. We're going to have content that is new from the best of the best out in the community. They're bringing it to share. It was just, there's so much good stuff happening in our community that we couldn't not share it. So I'm excited to see how this works out. It's going to be
Me
amazing.
too.
Every week, upgraded.
Cool. Why am I not seeing? Oh, there we are. Cool. All right. So another thing that we announced was the State of Spring 2022. This is the third year, I believe, we've done this. This is a survey that we go out and survey Spring developers, and it gives you a chance to share your experiences with us. This year's survey explored important trends while focusing on areas for potential improvement. So we get feedback from the community. We want to hear from them. We want to hear from you and take that feedback, and it helps drive, the next generations of Spring Framework. So what I thought we'd do is you can go get this yourself. You can just put in your email address and you can get this. But what we're going to do is just kind of go through this and see if anything sticks out to us, see if anything is interesting, and maybe have a little discussion around it. Sound good?
That sounds like a great idea. Simon definitely watched the SpringOne Essentials. He's filling us in with some of the announcements around Gemfire and also RabbitMQ. I'm a big fan of Tap. Tap 1.4 got announced. The RabbitMQ as a service got announced. Lots of really, really interesting stuff. And I also enjoyed the actual customer presentations as well. A lot of really good content.
Yeah, I'll point out in my newsletter here, there is a link. Our colleague Rita has a really good roundup here. I don't know why I didn't show this before, but basically, if you want to get a roundup of all the announcements that happened, like the Gemfire, like RabbitMQ as a service, which is really great, this particular blog post on the tanzu.vmware.com blog is really good and kind of puts all of those things into one place. So, State of Spring 2022. Let's go through this. So the introduction just kind of goes through what it is. It's divided into 4 sections: modern architectures, new tech gaining ground, upgrade and flourish, and springing up to speed. There's some information about kind of just an overview of what this report has included. There's some demographics. So from a region standpoint, our 2022 survey reached a total of 1,500 qualified individuals, wide range of roles, regions, and jobs. So we see half of it, almost half, was from Europe. That's really great to see. Years of Spring Boot experience, more than 5 years of experience kind of dominated this survey. And then all kinds of, here are the demographics for the survey. So here's what we can get to. Modern architectures in full flower. The shift to modern architectures and APIs continues with technologies like OpenAPI, GraphQL is gaining momentum. That's great to see. So using mostly modern architectures in 2021 was kind of close to 50%. We see that kind of shifting a little bit even more. So that trend is only going to continue to climb, I think.
I wonder why it's not going faster. I do get to hear customers, and I do get to hear things, not just from the Spring developers, but also from operations. And I think everybody understands where things are headed. I think not everybody, I think a lot of us have seen the value of things like Kubernetes, things like multi-cloud. And I think that it's finally starting to loosen up. So just a feeling that I've got at the beginning of the year is that this is definitely true. And I think the adoption curve here is going to increase quite a bit in 2023. I'm excited to see it next year.
It doesn't really surprise me that it's moving at this pace, because I've worked in enough Fortune 100 companies to know that it takes a village to move things in larger companies. So it is what it is. But yeah, it's nice to see that number going up. That's a good sign. So we talked about modular monoliths. Modular monoliths was a question that we added to an architectural style for 2022. The idea of a monolithic modular system has regained popularity. So as we can see here, microservices are continuing to dominate. Up in the upper right-hand corner here, you can kind of see the legend. The darker green is 2021. Lighter green is 2022. So pretty much stayed the same. Microservices gets talked about a lot. modular monoliths. A lot of people are starting to talk about that. Reactive kind of staying the same. Serverless, we can see, has jumped up. So a nice 5% increase there in serverless, which I'm a big fan of. Glad to see that is kind of catching momentum. And especially in the Java space, Java and Spring, right? Like Java's never been like, hey, this is the first choice for serverless workloads or scale to zero. And with all the different technologies that are coming out around it, some of the different platforms, it's making serverless a really great choice, not only in the Java space, but in the Spring space. So.
Yeah, I feel like the conversation around serverless is going to change a little. When up until recently, when I heard serverless, I thought of lambdas and functions. I thought of definitely the scale to zero aspect. However, with Spring Boot 3 and what we're able to do, and what I think we've shown it here in Spring Office Hours, I can deliver a lot of those things. Without the Lambda part, I can deliver my applications, my MVC apps, my eventing apps. I can deliver those things still as scale to zero, even though they don't check the Lambda function box. So I think that there's maybe some opportunity for that serverless definition to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are just some exciting things happening in the community. One of the things I've touched on before is AWS Lambda Snap Start, which, one of the drawbacks to using kind of Java on a serverless function is the cold start time, the time it takes to kind of start up the execution environment, the runtime, everything. They have made improvements on the AWS side there. So that's great to see. And Spring Cloud Function is really great. It's, if you haven't had a chance to play with it, you can write your serverless functions using the Spring programming paradigm that you're used to, and they're platform agnostic. So if one of these functions are going to AWS, and maybe you have other workloads that are on Google Cloud or Azure, you can kind of export them that way as well. So check out Spring Cloud Function if you haven't had a chance to play with that yet.
We haven't done that in a while. I was doing that at the beginning of 2022 quite a bit. Hey, let me take a function, a Spring Cloud function, run it on Azure, run it on AWS, run it on GCP, run it on Knative. Maybe it's time to circle and bring that one back. I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, that'd be great. I have a ton of stuff around, a ton of content around serverless in Spring and in Java in general. So yeah, that'd be fun. Cool. Let's talk about the use cases of Spring. So APIs remain the top Spring use case. So being able to expose APIs remained the dominant use case in 2022. Exposing APIs to internal customers or consumers has been steady growth since this survey began. So if we look over to the right, exposing APIs to internal customers, we can see that has continued to rise and now at 86%. So that is a lot of what people are doing. I know, my previous position, that is exactly what we're doing. Tons and tons of services throughout an organization, and they each got to talk to each other, and they would talk to each other via REST or event-driven architecture. So pretty good to see. Also, GraphQL down there getting a little love, 24%. I'm a big fan of GraphQL, so nice to see that on the rise. And based on the attendance at some of my talks lately and the questions I've been getting about it, I think that number is only going to rise. So I'm excited for GraphQL in 2023.
I'm happy to see SOAP still on there. I was just thinking the other day that idea of, hey, I've released this API, and this is exactly how you consume it, and you can generate your client from this. It's like there's a lot of power there. So I don't want to dismiss it. I'm happy to see that it's still hanging around, because there's still a lot of value in those types of services.
Again, I would not want to write a client that has to talk to SOAP, but if it just works out of the box, and as I said earlier, I know lots of companies who just takes a little bit of time to move forward. So
it's still super powerful. I'm I'm pretty sure that we can still generate SOAP-based apps out of our Spring Initializer. Although I haven't
Yeah, I
done it in a
know
while, so I'm
the web service
speaking
stuff
without
Greg
experience.
works on, and I'm pretty sure is kind of the lead for some of that web service stuff. So
I think that might be worth cracking open again because, yeah, I'm just saying,
yep.
it's good stuff.
All right.
Oh, look at there. Look at there. I know it's an outdated topic, but it would be great if you guys can cover calling SOAP services with Spring Boot. What's the
There you
best way to
go.
do it, et cetera? Like, we're speaking the same language. I am so happy to hear that I have somebody else. There's another question. Hey, Dan, how do you feel about Keycloak? Is that a good idea, Keycloak?
So it's been a while since I've used Keycloak, probably a good 5 years. So I don't know that I'm the best person to answer that question. Um, if if it's still being actively maintained and it's still being used, yes, it's a great idea. There's also another product you can use from the Spring team. There's a Spring authorization server which just hit 1.0. So that's something else that you could look at as well.
I'm pretty sure you can use them together as well.
Yep.
Yeah, stay tuned. I'm going to be pulling in Keycloak into another effort. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll have some for
Are
that
you familiar
real
with
soon.
where Keycloak is right now? Is that still
It is still being
being
maintained. It is still talked about a lot. Just
okay?
my perception from the community. So yeah, I think it's still a
Cool.
safe bet.
Cool.
Also, hey, this one a good one. JPA native query not working with GraalVM. Please fix it. I would love to see what you've got. We can help. Send us a link. Send us some information. Give us a gift, and let's see what we can do to help.
Yeah, I wonder what's not working with that. Should be pretty easy to check out. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
interested in that as
Well, I
well.
know that it's not like completely broken. I think this is going to be one of those edge cases because, yeah, I think
Right.
we've demonstrated the JPA native query working with GraalVM.
Right.
So we're
Okay.
happy to help.
Cool. All right, I'm going to go on. Spring projects fruitful for developers. An important goal of the Spring team is to deliver modern apps quickly. Almost half of the stakeholders reported that they will be using more Spring modules in the coming years. An increase in 8 points. For 2022, the top 3 Spring projects remain Spring Security, Spring Data, and Spring Web MVC. So not surprising there. Those are the 3 I kind of reach for all the time. So Spring Web, Security, and Data. Notable gainers: Spring Kafka, Spring Batch, and Spring Webflux. So cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Another question. Red Shock. Where should I put my API calls logic? Is it service layer or something else?
Yeah, so it I, as always it depends. What logic is what logic are you talking about? So, you know, if I'm talking to a database and we have like a data tier, that could be in a repository. I write a lot of applications where I don't need a service layer and I'm just talking to a repository that talks to a database. I know so many people create examples out there or have examples of like complicated architectures where you have interfaces and services and that delegates to a repository. It doesn't need to be that complicated. If I'm talking to a database, I use a repository. If I have business logic that pertains to that application, then it would be, yeah, service layer. It works great. That's exactly what that's for. Um, how you split up that business logic and where in the service layer, kind of what level it's in, depends on what it is. And then, it may delegate to some other project for some
Mhm.
business logic. But yeah, service layer is a good place to start.
I think that one of the things that we've learned and we've heard multiple times here is that it depends on how you're testing a lot of times. Don't forget about how you want to split up your application in order to have it properly tested and get that coverage.
I was
So there's
just gonna
more
say,
than just like, hey, where should it be? Which pattern should it follow? What matters more with those patterns that we're following is how you're testing them. Right? We
yep,
can throw it all into one box, and that's okay. But when you split it out, you can test things individually. And if you're into testing, you should check out Code, another show on Tanzu TV. Uh, Mario Gray has been doing a lot of really, really interesting stuff over there. Check that out.
Yeah, it's a great point. I was just gonna, as soon as I got done talking, I thought about that as well. So I'm not against TDD. I just don't do TDD a lot. I end up writing tests for code that I've already written, which again is, I know, sacrilege to some people, but that's how I get down, I guess. But one thing that I do love about testing is it usually points out problems with my code. So I like to get something to work first. Like, it doesn't need to be this beautiful architected code for it to work. I like to solve the problem first. Let me get it working. Okay, I think I have what I think is a viable solution. I'm going to write some tests for this. Because as soon as I start writing tests, that usually there start to be code smells in my tests that go, oh, maybe I shouldn't, this one service class is doing way too much. That's a code smell for me that, we're violating the single responsibility principle. Like, that is not, there's too much going on there. So when I start to write tests, it kind of gives me an idea of, okay, maybe I could refactor this a different way. So get it to work first. Then, if however you write your tests can usually lead to some of those answers.
One of the things that I found in my career is that if I'm grabbing, there's a bug, and I'm looking at somebody else's code, I always do TDD first. So, hey, Dan, you've given me this ticket, and there's an issue in the member service, and the issue is this. The first thing that I do is create a test that validates that bug. Then I start working on the fix, and I know that it's fixed when that test goes green.
And then you ask the original developer, why wasn't there a test for this scenario?
Yes, I wasn't going to go there. I was saying that pattern of, I've been there. I don't write tests all the time,
For sure.
but I'll also say pairing with Mario while he's doing the TDD makes it easier. So I've done a few sessions with Mario, and then when I go and I'm doing my own thing, I found myself writing tests first. I find myself making these changes on my new projects. I'm automatically including the Spring REST docs. I'm automatically including test containers because I've found these patterns that are just so valuable that I can't imagine not putting it in right away because I know I'm going to do it, and I know it speeds me up and gives me more confidence.
Yep. That's a really good point. So I know a lot of times, I'm sure everybody has done this at one point. You may be writing some code, you're in a block of code. You may write some comment there that says to do, right? Let's validate that this particular use case works. So instead of writing that comment in the code, just go write a test for that right away. Let it fail. That's fine. But you have your documentation for later that says, oh yeah, I need to go ahead and check for that use case. Now I can write a test to make sure that use case passes, right?
Thank you. Another question. Do you have an alternative for Akka Actor with native Spring Boot?
I don't know what Akka is, so.
I have a lot of this conversation. I've had a lot of this conversation in the past, but I think I need more information to understand your use case. The Akka Actor pattern can be used in a lot of places, and yes, we have ways of doing that with Spring. But yeah, tell us more. Tell us more. Good questions. Bring your questions. Remember, if you leave here and you still have questions answered, that's on you. Bring your questions. We'll get to them. If we don't get to them during the show, we're going to make sure that we at least see them so we can get to them offline, and then we'll share them as content.
All right. New tech gaining ground. The Spring team keeps a close eye on up and coming innovations. More than 54% of surveyed this year like the fact that new modules are consistently being added to keep up to date with the latest technology. So that's really great to see. Project Loom and GraalVM jumped to the top of the new tech people plan to use, each selected by 30%. So GraalVM, Loom, Project Loom, those are two big things that everyone is very interested in. We talked about both of those last week in San Francisco. So that's really exciting that this is exactly what people are looking for. So we'll keep talking about that. I talked a little bit more about Loom last week. We'll hopefully get to some more of that as the year goes on, and as we march towards Spring Framework 6.1. Hopefully Loom will be out of preview in the next version of whatever. It's hard to keep up with versions of Java now. The next one's 20, so I think 21. It may go out of preview, so we'll see. But yeah, good to see that.
I have a question. Welcome to the show. What do I have to watch out when I go productive with a Spring Boot application in a Docker container? What do I have to look out for? Not a whole lot. If you use the Maven Spring Boot plugin, you're getting the best of the best. You're getting the best practices from the rest of the community. We've been doing this for a while. The whole build pack story has just moved into that plugin. So yeah, I highly recommend checking out the Maven Spring Boot plugin, which is going to use the Paketo build packs out of the box. And then you've got all the support and all of the that expertise bundled right into your containers.
Yep. When it comes to containers, we have a simple rule around here at Spring Office Hours, and that is friends don't let friends write Docker files.
They just don't do it. Don't let your friends write their own Docker files.
Yep.
Yeah. Another question. Resource server and OAuth client. How do we use these in microservices? It's so easy. It is so easy. It's easy. I want to show that. I would crack open my IDE and show that right now. But I want to finish going through this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, next time, let's show this off. Or in an upcoming show, we got to show this off. We got to do a few more demos. But in the meantime, I'm pretty sure Dan's got a good example on his website, on his YouTube of this exact same thing.
Yeah, I don't know. So when you say the term in microservices, like what are you trying to do? Because if you're trying to have a bunch of different clients authenticate with one thing, right? That's where we're going to start talking about Spring Authorization Server. So you have one central place where all the authentication is done. You don't want to rewrite that logic X number of times, right? And each of those clients register with that authorization server. So the microservice 1, microservice 2, and 3 all say, hey, I'm someone who's going to authenticate with you, authorization server. And so that's how that happens. So I would say if you haven't had a chance to check out the documentation on that, start there with Spring Authorization Server. That should get you up and running pretty quickly.
Yes. Let's see. Why you don't care about explaining Spring MVC with template engine like Timeleaf? Is it still useful? That is a great question. I was actually on Twitch last night with somebody in Korea, where I assume they were in Korea. Because I was using Korean to do the translation, but they were still using Timeleaf. Timeleaf is still amazing. It's still very widely used. It's still super powerful. So yeah, if you are running into something, if there's something that you'd like to see around Timeleaf, around what you're doing with Timeleaf, or you'd like to see some of the patterns that we see out in the community, let us know. Happy to share more on Timeleaf. It is super powerful. I'll be honest, lately I'm clicking the Vaadin button. I click the Vaadin button and I have a lot of it taken care of for me. But Timeleaf is where I've been for the last 7 years, I think, it's kind of been my default, and it's only recently switched to Vaadin.
Yeah, so I think it really depends on what type of applications you're trying to build, right? So a lot of the demos I build are API driven. So whether I'm using REST or GraphQL, I'm not really using a front end or a templating engine on the Spring side. Those APIs are developed in Spring Boot. They are consumed via other clients. So those clients could be a mobile application in iOS or Android. They could be a front-end application written in JavaScript. So I think another thing that gives way to this is just the rise and popularity of the different frameworks out there, whether it's React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, and insert any framework here. Those are really great to use these days. And so that is usually what I reach for. So if I have an API in Spring Boot, I may develop a front end in something like Vue that talks to that API. So nothing wrong with using Timeleaf. I think that just teams already doing front end development may not have developers on staff who use Timeleaf. They may have front end engineers that work in these different component based libraries. And it's like, all right, let's build our front ends separate so that we can deploy them separately. Because again, that's one of those trade-offs itself. Like, hey, I want to constantly deploy my front end without having to restart my back end. So really, it just depends what you're building. Nothing wrong with Timeleaf, but in the world that we live in today, as you saw from the state of the Spring survey, most people are using Spring Boot to build APIs, and that API is being consumed by some other client.
I definitely have, I think I have some example repositories. One of the patterns I like to do with Timeleaf is I like to take a Bootstrap theme and just grab that Bootstrap theme, and then I'm using Timeleaf to fill in the blanks. And that is a super fast, super powerful way of getting that reactive, or is that what they call it in the front end? The
interactive,
the resizable, all the good stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know the word I'm thinking of, but yeah, that's a pattern that I've used quite a bit. So don't be afraid to use Timeleaf. Don't be afraid to grab it. It'll work. What's a best practice around Docker files? We said it already. Don't write your own Docker file. Don't write your own Docker file. Use Maven Spring Boot build image every time. And that not just for Spring. Find a build pack. Don't write your own Docker files. I'm not saying that's just for Java. I'm saying that across the board, don't write Docker files. Don't do it. Don't let your friends do it. Use a build pack.
Your time is valuable. You could be doing much better things with your time than writing build pack but writing Docker files.
No, hey, this is it. Don't apologize. Yeah, we're here for you. We are at your service. For if one person shows up to the show or if 1,000 people show up to the show, we are here at your service. That's the whole goal of this show. As much as I like to learn from Dan, we're both here to support you, the community. And if we don't have the answers, we've got Slack. We know how to get it.
Yep.
Why Spring remains less efficient than Quarkus can see Spring greater. I'm not sure I believe that. But again, we could take a look with Spring Framework 6 and Spring Boot 3. I don't think that this can be said anymore, and I would love to educate you on this. There's a lot. It really depends on the use case, etc. But it's worth exploring. It's worth exploring for sure. I don't think that this is the case anymore, though. More questions. Thank you, James Hayes. What build packs do you recommend? What do I recommend? I recommend Paketo. Jumping into that Paketo ecosystem, they have a ton, and the people there are great. The community around there is great. I'm actively trying to support and upstream some of the work I've done around build packs into the Paketo ecosystem as well. So that's where my heart's at. Do you have any others, Dan?
No, that's it. Paketo.
Fix our socket streams. I don't understand. I need more information. That doesn't help me. I know that there's a few issues open. Tell me which one that you're interested in. Go add information that you have around those issues in GitHub and let us know. Because we are also doing a lot of exploring, and Mario, my good friend Mario Gray, also has a lot of great content around using our socket streams, not just for message-driven, event-driven things, but combining functions and that function-to-function combination to get really interesting outputs with native images using our socket streams. Let us know what else you'd like to know.
You know what? We have been saying it, but we need to get Mario on the show to talk to us about...
He's a busy person.
He is. I get it.
I might have to just show up at his house and make it
happen. We were in San Francisco last week. We probably could have done that.
He was in Nebraska.
Oh, that's right. We went to San Francisco. He was in Omaha.
Yes.
So.
Can you explain test containers? Why should I use test containers? I would love to explain test containers. Thursday, test containers live.
Oh
You
yeah.
should check that out. I'm going to be there. I'm going to walk through using test containers with Spring Boot in more than one way. How do you use test containers as part of your regular integration tests? How to use test containers to validate and test your native images. The idea is that the implementation of the database, I've done in the past a lot of things to where, hey, I want to validate that my persistence here works. Some of the things I've done is maybe I've used H2 or an in-memory database during my unit tests, and then I switched to some other version of a database down the road. That can cause problems. So the idea with test containers is you can use the exact same implementation, the exact same API for your unit tests that you might use in production. And what it does is it simply pulls up a Docker image, it deploys a Docker image from scratch, or you can initialize it and you can run your tests against the actual database that you're going to be running in production. That's an
Yep.
example.
Yeah, and it runs it extremely fast, which I think is what blew me away, because I'm like, well, do I really want to be spinning up a Docker container and then executing these tests? Runs really fast, or I wouldn't have used it. So I think that was really impressive to me.
Is Java now Jakarta?
Java EE is now Jakarta EE. So big difference. Java EE stands for Enterprise Edition, I think. Yeah, I think I just did a video on this, so I should know that. But Java EE Enterprise Edition was really for building enterprise applications in Java. That was stagnant for a while. Oracle governed Java EE, had ownership of it, was stagnant for a while. The Eclipse Foundation came along and said, hey, we'd really like to take ownership of that project. We'd like to kind of, evolve some of the APIs in that project. Oracle said, great, you can do it with one requirement. You need to rename all of the packages from Java X something to Jakarta or to anything, but they ended up with Jakarta. So that
Lots
is
of great
basically
questions.
so
Good answer.
Spring Boot 3 and Spring Framework 6 now use Jakarta EE 9 and 10. So yes, if you are updating from Spring Boot 2.7 to Spring Boot 3, you need to rename those packages. Your IDE can do it for you. IntelliJ has a nice little feature that says, hey, rename all of the Java EE packages to Jakarta EE. So not a huge change for you, but as framework, for the framework itself, it was a pretty big change. We had a lot to go through to get that to work, but it's nice. Now we are on the newer versions of Jakarta, and we get to see an evolution of those APIs as we move forward. So.
How do I know how many users at once can my basic Spring API application handle before another container is created? That's a great question. That is a great question that can be answered by using the actuator, by making your code observable. You can expose and you can see and you can watch in real time what's happening. You've got to understand your application you have a chance to learn before it goes to production how your application is going to behave. And with this approach, you can figure that out. Every application is different. My Hello World app could probably support 10,000 users in a single container because I've compiled it natively. If your application is making thousands of blocking calls to multiple backends, it's going to behave different. So it really depends on an app to app basis, but that's why we've provided the observability and the Spring Actuator, so you can get real-time insights into what's happening with your Spring Boot app. Why can't our socket be a little simpler to put in place? Be like WebSocket. I'm not sure what you're running into, and I really want to know more. So I'm going to ask you to reach out, DM me on Twitter or on LinkedIn directly. I want to work with you to figure out what's going on because I'm a big fan of our socket. I think it's a great little protocol, and I want you to be excited about it as well. James says, for testing, I borrowed the strategy used by Laravel of having factories for entities. That's a great idea. That's an absolute great idea. Oops, let's see here. How do you generate Docker file if not manually? Spring Boot build image. You don't need the Docker file. Use the build pack. The build pack has all the guts inside of it. You can have multiple versions, and it's configurable. So you're not just taking a simple Docker file. Maybe for one build, you want to attach an agent for app dynamics or for other. You can do that all within a consistent guardrail that's got support from the community. So don't write a Docker file. If you see a Docker file in your repository, do not touch it. Somebody else created it. Somebody else has got to maintain it. Don't touch it. Don't use the Docker file. Don't let your friends use the Docker file. Use build packs. How does Paketo compare to using build packs on Cloud Foundry? Are they compatible? That is a great question. The Cloud Foundry build packs are not compatible with the cloud native build packs. But the idea that the architecture, the idea is the same, is that you're letting some platform build the images that are actually going to be ran on your platform, in your Kubernetes or in your Docker or wherever. The Paketo build packs can be used inside of Cloud Foundry. They can be deployed as Docker images. They can be used on Kubernetes. They can be used on Docker. They can be used standalone. But that's not the case for the Cloud Foundry build packs. The Paketo Cloud Native build packs are the evolution of this build pack pattern, and it is it comes from a joint venture of the team over at Heroku and Pivotal, Tanzu, formerly Pivotal, where they're taking this standard and they made it available so that we could have this concept of build packs that could run anywhere, or the images that could run anywhere. Let's see. Spring now uses Jakarta imports.
Yep.
How can you please explain about new observability API with Micrometer? How is it different from just using logs? Oh, there is so much. Oren, I'm going to point you, just because we're running out of time, I'm going to point you to episode, it was a 14 with Jonathan Ivanov. You got to go watch that episode of Spring Office Hours. But then you come back. We've had a couple questions earlier in today's show around observability. We have some stuff to show you, but I want you to watch that episode first and then come back and join us.
Yeah, and I think so. Again, just at a high level, observability is not just logs, right? It's about metrics, logging, and distributed tracing. So at least those three things kind of fit into that observability bucket. And each one of those answers a question a different way, right? Like how, when, why, those types of things. So check out that episode. There's some great information in there.
All right. Thank you. I use Loom, with Spring Boot 3 native on production for a small project, and it works great. I saved 60% of resources. I'm so happy. That is amazing. That is amazing. I would love to hear more. If you could share any of it, that would be wonderful. We want to hear your story. Let us know what's going on so that we can tell the world what's a good path. It might not be the best path, but this is the path where we can go forward, and it's working for you. Like, I think everybody in here, if you go to your boss or your wife and you said, hey, I'm saving us 60%, I'm saving 60%, I think you're going to pat on the back. So let's let everybody do that.
And so, if you're running, workloads on something like Spring MVC, Loom is gonna be pretty big. So we're looking forward to that.
Awesome. Do you know if I can test Java virtual threads on Cloud Foundry using Cloud Foundry build packs, or do I need to create my own Docker image? That is a really good question around the virtual thread. Yeah.
Let's unpack that, because there's a lot of things in there. So let's back up to just virtual threads, right? Virtual threads is what we've been talking about with Project Loom. They are new in Java 19. They are a preview. So this isn't even a release yet. This is still a preview feature. So to enable it, you have to do the -- enable -preview when you're running your application. So with that said, there is a blog post on the Spring IO blog that you can read through of how you can use virtual threads in a Spring Boot 3 project. And so again, if you're using something like Spring MVC and you're doing blocking operations, I'm calling out to a database, I'm calling out to read a file, doing some input output, anything that is blocking, Project Loom and virtual threads are going to help you out a lot. We saw 60%, a number thrown around. It's going to help out a lot in those particular use cases. So the suggestion here is, I think someone said they were running a small project on it. Go test this out. This is a preview. This is not final yet. Take a sample app that you have, go ahead and run it on a server somewhere in preview mode for a small subset of traffic and test it out. But in those kind of scenarios, for those type of workloads, it's going to be awesome. Now, on Cloud Foundry, using build, those, I don't know.
Lots of
That's a
questions.
whole nother stack on top of that. But if we just bring it back to virtual threads, Spring Boot 3 in a Spring MVC app, yes, you are going to see performance improvements there.
Yeah. So you've got options. If that build pack, a Java 19 build pack is available for Cloud Foundry, then you could probably go forward with it. Otherwise, you have another option of doing the Docker image. I'll be honest, I haven't taken a Java 19 compatible build pack to Cloud Foundry, so I'm putting it on my list. Come back, join us next week. Come back, and I will have an answer for you, and maybe even a demo.
Ooh.
Alexander says, hey, DaShaun, sorry for spam. No worries. I've messaged you on Twitter regarding specific SOAP use case that I have to integrate with a legacy service. Let's go. Let's go. We're gonna connect. We're gonna do this. Let's go. Thank you for asking. It'd be my pleasure to sit down and work with you on something like that. Now that you've mentioned Timeleaf, is it better to have translation? Oh, I think you mean like language translation in Timeleaf with its files, or in the front end C view with Beautify. Do you have any opinions on that? Because I do.
I don't. I would probably put it on the back end, but because, so now I guess I do have an opinion. So I'd probably put it on the back end, because what if you have a second client that starts talking to it? Now you have it all centralized in one place. That translation happens there instead of on the client.
Yep. Also, the translations, I've done that in the past. The idea of, hey, I need to translate this into maybe 47 different languages. That process needs to happen somewhere, so that the back end process, the way that I can ingest that into Timeleaf as those translation, those different locale versions of the properties that I'm going to be translating. That is a simple process. I know that process, so I know what that path to production looks like. So I have no reason to disrupt that, versus having those translations, because then in order to do that on the front end, I've got to send all the translation data to every client. Right? You can't do a translation if they don't have the data, or they're going to have to make calls for that translation to the back end, which again, you could do it on the back end. So I have a strong opinion about that. I would much rather it be done on the back end for those reasons. Hey, Sleep That Burns, you stumbled upon this. This is, we try to do this weekly. We might even be doing it more than weekly in the future, but yes, this is a regular show. Today is episode 27. Follow us on VMware Tanzu, on Tanzu TV, springofficehours.io.
That will forward you over.
Yeah, you'll get to where you need to go. springofficehours.io. James, thanks. We're happy that you're here. Thanks for joining. Cool. Everybody, thanks for joining.
Yeah, if you have any more questions, get them in. I think what we'll do is we'll save kind of the second half of that State of Spring survey. We can always touch on that.
There's so much cool stuff to talk about there.
Yes, for sure. So cool.
Hashtag Spring Office Hours on your places. We are paying attention. I'm writing bots. I will share those too. Like, we are writing. We want to help you out as much as possible. You don't have to wait and bring your questions here. We have a Spring community on Twitter. We have the Gitter community. We have Stack Overflow. We're where you are. We're in those places. We're on LinkedIn. We're in the LinkedIn group. We are in those places where you are. Hashtag Spring Office Hours. Let us know. Otherwise, bring your questions here. We're happy to help.
Cool. I see one more question. Let me just pull that up. Can I still use Sleuth, or should I migrate to Micrometer? So yeah, if you're in Spring Boot 3, as you're moving forward, you're going to want to move to Micrometer. If you're doing distributed chasing, you had to bring in Spring Cloud Sleuth before. You don't have to do that in Spring Boot 3. Yep. So one less dependency just kind of rolled up into that same API. So I would move to that.
Definitely move to Spring Boot 3.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure. Pleasure is ours. Thank you, guys. Thanks, James. Thanks for answering all my questions. Now I can go to the next.
Our friend Josh will appreciate this one. Love it. Thank you for sharing.
Yep. Is a certification in Spring worth it? So worth the effort. So I think that's really a question you need to ask yourself. Certifications in general, are they worth it? Is it something that your work is requiring? If it is, then obviously it's worth it. If it's something that you're seeing out in the job market as you're looking for a new job and you see it a lot, then it becomes worth it.
And where are you? Like if you're Dan, Dan doesn't need a certificate. But
I could
me,
use
I'm
one.
thinking about it. I'm thinking about maybe I should invest and go
Yeah.
ahead and go down that path because I would like to know more. So
Yeah.
I think it's an individual basis, but that's something for you. I definitely
So
think it's worth it for some people.
so that would that actually brings up something else. So I think if it's going to drive you to learn more, then I think it's well worth it. So why do we read books? Why do we take courses? Because we want to learn from someone else. We want an incentive to learn as well. If I don't have a book in front of me, I really, how am I going to learn? I need something to kind of drive me to like learn a particular subject. So if you're using something like Spring Academy, there's courses that's going to give you motivation to go through those courses, learn more about Spring. We can all learn more about a particular subject. So you get to learn more about Spring. And the end goal is, hey, you get certified. Whether that certification does anything for you later, I don't think is the end all question, right? It's the process of getting there. DaShaun and I run a lot. We may run a race later this year. We may run a half marathon or something like that. The half marathon is great. It's a huge goal, but getting there is really what it's all about. All the time that it takes, like months of preparation, getting all of those runs in, those practices in, that's what it's really about, right? The end goal of going through a half marathon, that's fun, but everything leading up to it is really what it's about. So I would say yes. Long answer, short, yes, because you're going to learn something new and you're going to feel proud about yourself that you got through it. So,
James, I have never used GraphQL or the pointers when to use GraphQL versus REST. James, I'm going to go ahead and say it because Dan won't. Go check out Dan's YouTube videos. His talks around Spring for GraphQL have been the most popular topic in 2022 of all the work that we've done and all the conferences I've been to. That conversation, that topic has been the most popular one.
thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. So I think when to use it. Yeah. I mean, it's a technology like others that you always have to say, when should I be using this? I do have some talks on it. Real short of it is, if you have a bunch of different clients talking to one particular API, and when I say clients, I mean, hey, we have a bunch of mobile apps here and we have a bunch of different maybe micro front ends over here. We have an IoT application over here. All these clients talking to a single REST API, right? You start to retrofit your REST API to meet all of those client needs. So I instead of just CRUD, methods that are returning a list of widgets, right? Now I'm writing all these different methods to format the data the exact way that each of these specific clients are asking for it. If you get into that business, that's not great because now you have all these different methods out there. More code means more maintenance, right? Now you're writing code and you're introducing new bugs. The best bug-free code that you have in your system is the code that you don't write. So I think from that standpoint, if you have a lot of clients requesting information in a different way, GraphQL makes a lot of sense because you have just a single endpoint and you're putting that onus back on the client saying, hey, you go ahead and tell me exactly what data you want, and I will kind of retrieve it on the back end for you.
This has been a great episode. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I'm going to say this. Spring is coming. The journey is the destination.
Spring is coming.
Spring is coming.
It is February 1st tomorrow. You can't tell you how excited I am. I look forward to March 17th, 19th, somewhere around there, when the clocks move forward and it just stays light out longer. I cannot wait because that means I get to get outside and start running again. I hate running in cold weather. So. Yes, I'm excited. Spring is coming. Spring is coming. So.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Hopefully we'll be back next week on Tuesday, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, Spring office hours. We'll see you there. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.